Join me, if you would, for a tale, one of heroics, revenge, and dragons, taking place here in the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros. Daran Dryland is a name you will soon become familiar with, yet he was not always Dryland. For Daran was brought into this world as a lowborn, here in the Talor Islands, along the Dornish coast. It was here that Daran grew up among sellswords, where he learnt the importance of the blade and how best to wield it. Yet he also learnt of things far greater than just blades. The Targaryen dragons that still to this day trouble the Dornish skies. In the time of the Conqueror, many homes across the Dornish peninsula were turned to glass by the dragon's might. Yet the Dornish never broke, the Dornish never bowed, and still to this day they remain separate from the Iron Throne. And while it might feel a world away, the Iron Throne still exerts its influence over the realm. For now, there is a uneasy peace, an understanding. Yet, how could all of that death, all of that destruction be passed over in favor of peace? A thought that constantly plagued the young mind of Daran. But what was one boy to do? Nay, what could a man do, or a nation, against the house of the dragon? And while it was true that dragons could perish, the Dornish proved as much with the slaying of the great beast and Princess Rhaenys herself. It was not simple. No, to injure the house of the dragon, one must become a dragon themselves. Yet no man or woman lacking the blood of the dragon could hope to ride one. But that wouldn't stop young Daran. If he could not himself take to the skies, perhaps one day his own blood might. Spending all the coin he had accumulated in his teenage years, serving as a Dornish sellsword, he sailed all the way to the Gauntlet, but a day's travel from King's Landing itself. It was there that a great tourney took place. Knights from every realm across Westeros gathered to prove their mettle, their worth, their honor. Yet, what brought Daran here was the melee. It was here that the first step in his grand plan would take place. A title was on the line. Knighthood for the victor. A knighthood with no lands attached to the title, but a knighthood nonetheless. It was a brutal and grueling affair. Yet after hours of sweat and blood, young Daran was the last man standing. Victorious, and no longer just Daran, choosing to take the extinct Dornish house name of Dryland. And so it was. Daran Dryland was born anew. The first and arguably most important step in Daran's plan was out the way, and the second now glanced down upon him from the royal family in attendance. The great conciliator and his kin had been less interested in the unrefined melee than they had been in the joust of the knights earlier in the day. Yet Daran had earned the attention and, to the disappointment of her father, the favor of Sarah Targaryen. As Daran met her gaze, all thoughts of vengeance, blood, fury washed away. It was true that he had hopes to court the dragon, yet he never might have imagined falling for one, only but a few moons his senior. In that moment, Daran declared his victory, a dedication to Sarah. He would leave the Gauntlet that day, a knight, a lowborn no more, and a love for one that he thought he could only hate. Yet these tales are never so simple. Young Daran Dryland and Sarah Targaryen, they could never marry. He was a knight, yes, but he was a knight with no lands, and Sarah was a Targaryen princess. Yet Daran was a man of ambition, perhaps foolishly so. He would find a way for them to be together. For now, they would bide their time, stealing glances at one another when tourneys came about. While Sarah continued to live her days as a princess, Daran lived his as a knight of the realm. Forming the Dryland band, he now had a small following. Cyrene and Reynard served both as tutors and sworn swords. As you see, to the Dornish, all are worthy of carrying a blade, be the man or woman. These two were already proving themselves to be more than capable. Cyrene would serve as the camp's caravan master, and Reynard as Darian's second. Every good knight needs a maester, and so Darian sent word to Old Town in the hope they would send him one soon. Entering the gauntlet with his companions, Darian could see the main square was like many others. Passing by the main gates, they spy a handful of guards peeking out from the embrasures. Cyrene looks around with a content face, seemingly enjoying the change in scenery. Entering the tavern, the two travelers found it brimming with activity. A storyteller seated by the fire, and a bit further in, there was a gathering of shabby chums, pestering the server for more wine. By the entrance, Darian could spy an inconspicuous hooded figure, clearly someone who valued their privacy, yet Darian was far too intrigued. The hooded figure subtly slips through the tavern and down a stairwell into the cellar. Darian looks around gingerly before following her downstairs. At the bottom, she sits down by a chair fronted by a desk and lets the hood fall. I assume you recognize me by my reputation. The horrendous and snub-nosed criminal, Penny. I have tenderized people for slighter insults. Now, what do you want? Penny's gaze was fixated on Darian as she raised an inquisitive eyebrow. Penny was no doubt a treacherous villain, yet she was a very skilled one at that. There was but one real choice. I could use a woman of your skill, Penny. With 100 gold in hand, she was pricey, yet those skills could prove to be priceless. Returning upstairs, Darian spied a number of unemployed Stormlanders, raising his voice and asking them directly, I am looking for some skilled, reliable people to join my camp. Who among you are up for that task? 3 parties introduced themselves. Monel, the lewd, Aldereo, the cocky, and Reynard, the timid. Cyrene hummed to herself, peering at the prospects, considering which candidate to recruit. Reynard was no doubt quite a fighter, yet Darian already had a Renard, and another would only confuse things. Aldereo, however, was a shrewd steward, a Pentoshi man. His talents, no doubt, could go to use, managing the finances and the coin of the band. For 1 coin less than what he paid for Penny, Darian had yet another to follow him, now in far more debt than he would like. Darian would need to set his sights on the various contracts in the lands nearby. The closest came from Sir Daran. There was a warning to travelers near Briarcrest. Be on the lookout for renegades and reprobates haunting the backroads. If your sword arm is strong and your eye true, Sir Daran promises generous rewards in exchange for the head of a particular thug. Tearing down the notice and taking it with him, Darian tracked down the camp of this Sir Daran. This band of Sir Daran wrinkles his nose in distaste. Malcontents have been harassing my private estates. They burn, kill, and steal with near impunity, slipping away before my retainers can clap them in irons they so richly deserve. Darian nods. The gang must be slippery to warrant such a private bounty. Their leader is one Marrow. Bring me his head before he can slip away for good, and you'll have your payment. Knowing that his much smaller band would travel faster without their camp, Darian set forth to Briarcrest to track down this criminal. And there they first met Marrow. In the ragged hills of Briarcrest, the Dryland band spread out towards and around his own little band of ne'er-do-wells. Everyone tensed and ready for bloodshed. "Ha!" laughed Marrow. "Is this everyone you've bought? Excellent, excellent. A bit of fine sport at long last. And you're here in person too. I shall enjoy putting you in the dirt, scum." Marrow's group is clearly outnumbered, but they seem resolute nonetheless, willing to defend their leader or die in the attempt. There was but one option for Darian here, noble as it was, a fight to the death. For a few brief moments, Marrow and Darian pace in lazy half circles, each watching for an opening. Daran couches his spear, ready to defend himself, while Marrow clutches a dagger firmly to hand. Only one shall walk away from here today, and Daran intends it to be him. With a sudden twitch, the bout begins. Unexpectedly, Marrow manages to swing a vicious kick towards Daran's shin, momentarily hobbling him. Leaping into action, Daran launches a flurry of thrusting jabs, driving himself hard against Marrow's guard, wearing him down with each expertly timed strike. "Marrow!" screams his opponent, flailing his dagger furiously at him and around him. Daran's form is good, with only small errors, and Marrow's stance is failing. His opponent is still holding off his blows well, but he does seem to be faltering. Leaping into action again, yet another flurry strikes at the guard of Marrow, who is now on the back foot. Yet Daran still needs to consolidate his victory, and with one final thrust, it is over. Daran tosses the severed head to Sir Daron's agent, the red-purple meat landing wetly beside them. "You killed him? In single combat? My, how fierce," remarks the Sir's servant, gingerly handing over the band's pay at the same time. The words are of little consequence, but the delicious weight of the fat purse and its cargo of silver helps make their little hunt thoroughly worthwhile. Whilst traveling back to the gauntlet, the band encountered a wandering acolyte. Clement was his name, who claimed to have spent time studying at the Citadel, but did not have a maester's chain, so it is impossible to be certain. He apparently did not progress far in his studies, although Clement was not exactly who Daran had in mind when seeking a maester. He is certainly better than nothing. Not only intelligent, and a content gentleman at that, Clement seems to carry a robustness and prowess lacking in other maesters, still carrying an unhealthy amount of debt. Yet another contract was sought out, now from Sir Kenneth. Protecting the weak, the hard-working folk of Shinebridge were in need of help, and the Sir was offering all kinds of rewards to altruistic adventurers, both coin and provisions. With the Pentoshuman as his caravan guide, Daran would be sure to pay visit to the many interesting locations within the walls of King's Landing. Yet before they could even reach the walls, they suffered a great misfortune, riding on the road in Forgeview, when Serene's horse collapsed beneath her legs. "Curses upon curses," Serene hissed, as they all gathered around the horse's corpse, wondering what to do with it. The horse had been showing signs of exhaustion for a few days now, but it didn't seem that bad. Now they know better. Thankfully, there is a town not too far away where, should they decide to, the band could acquire a new horse for Serene there, or offer her a donkey. While it was yet more coin and further debt, Serene had been a stalwart companion of Daran. He would bear the debt for now, making a friend in the process, and perhaps yet another, a willing follower. Daran came across a man while passing through Forgeview. He appeared gullible and shrinked back as the band approached. "I'm tired of getting kicked around like a dog. No one respects me here. Everyone laughs as soon as casting is uttered. Fools, commoners, fools. God, I get so mad. I must get out of here. My skills could serve you well. Shall we discuss payment?" The beggar was truly of little use to the young Dornishman, choosing instead to carry on his way, paying him no mind. Daran was closer now to his love than he had been in more than a moon's time. Yet while traveling through the city's streets late at eve, wild dogs tore at their supplies. No one was hurt, but they did ransack some of the food supplies. Yet again, it would be a greater loss, as those supplies would need to be replaced. More debt. However, they were closer to their goal now, having visited the dragon pit of King's Landing and passing through the God's Gate. They finally arrived in the lands of Sir Kenneth. "Animals, thugs, ruffians," The mere thought seems to be enough to disturb Sir Kenneth's demeanour. The common people of this lordship are so agitated. I fear they may rise in arms at any moment. Those with young families have been rebuking my officers, asking why we have not protected them. It is a fair question, yet Daran is not here to argue. Daran is here for coin. A balanced approach would be taken. It was an approach that would take time. The days passed, slowly at first, then faster and faster, as the Dryland band did all they could to keep the subjects of Shinebridge safe and secure in their holdings. And that's when the news reached him. The news that he had feared, but far from now, not so soon. News that one of the Targaryen princesses had been betrothed not to a lord, but to a monster. Of all the decisions the Consolidator could have made, of all the many noble knights and lords of the realm, the king of the Iron Throne chose instead another, forgoing any choice or preference of his daughter, ever the Consolidator. Far beyond the reach of the Iron Throne, beyond the Great Wall itself, in the lands of the wildlings, there was but one tribe that differed from the others, the Thenns, far to the north. Their verdant valley sheltered from the icy cold of the far north. There they practiced feudalism not unlike the lords to the south of the wall. Somehow, the chieftain of the Thenns had brokered an alliance with the Iron Throne. The son and heir of Magnar Tormund, Stygot, was betrothed to the love of young Daran. For now, she still resided within the Red Keep, but it would not be so for long. The betrothal, if it should carry through, would see Sarah far further from Daran than he ever imagined possible. Ravens flew from Shinebridge to the Red Keep, and from the keep in return. Time was short, yet there was little that the young knight could do. Little but wait and hope that the gods might intervene. In some turn of good fortune, however, the band had performed excellently. 3, 4, and there goes the 5th lynx this morning. Daran putting the corpse down in a cart right in time for Sir Kenneth to arrive with some of his servants. What a magnificent job! No more murdered cattle, no more lost children. Here, have your payment. And if the common folk complain once again, I know who to call for. It was more coin, yet again. However, not enough to settle his debts. There was little that they could do, except return to their encampment in the Gauntlet. However, while passing through Hook Market, within the walls of King's Landing, Daran could feel the telltale sign of his purse being cut. Despite his immediate reaction, the thief disappeared in the crowd. Only through pure coincidence, one of the band spied a woman heading into the back alley. "Stop or I'll have your head," Renard called out towards her. And the thief turned around, giving the band an angry, shifty stare. Her name was Jonquil, and no doubt she did have some talent that could still be of use to the band. Taking pity on the girl, Daran would offer her a job. Jonquil, on the 5th of Moon 82, joined up with the Dryland band. Still desperately in need of coin and with little else to do, Daran turned his eyes to Wormwood. Lady Meloria was seeking valiant soldiers of fortune. She needed to travel to a distant county, yet unknown, and needed protection from bandits and accidents. She welcomed experienced travelers, and Daran's band would answer that call. A delegation from Lady Meloria sauntered through the flaps of Daran's great tent. "Greetings, adventurer," spoke an envoy. "Many are the roads of this world, and treacherous. If you work for Wormwood, my liege would pay you well for your expertise. I, Thorin, am a most loyal servant of the lady. It is her words I must carry to Crow's Nest, to the hall of Lady Rosamond. Guide me, protect me, and entrust my missive does not fall prey to prying eyes." Thorin would travel safely and swiftly to the court of Lady Rosamond, and so they planned their route, one that would take them 45 days to traverse. Crow's Nest lay in the Stormlands, and there were many interesting sights to see along the way. The band sought to see many of them upon their return to the Gauntlet, and so they set out, traveling the great Kingswood. It was teeming with all manner of wildlife. Jonquil and Daran both agreed that it would be a splendid place to go on a hunt. And while they didn't have time to stay for a proper outing, as they traversed the area, they both spied a pristine wild rabbit at the edge of the forest. It had peculiar markings on its fur. Daran motioned to Jonquil to survey the animal. As she spotted the rabbit, she grinned. "What do you say to a friendly wager, leader? Whoever strikes that pristine fellow with an arrow wins." It sounded to Daran like a deal, and with the rabbit in sight, they both slowly took purposeful aim at the creature as it gnashed away on a piece of straw, pulling back his string and releasing. The arrow flew straight through the animal's body. The sudden impact launched it a few paces, and the tiny body slumped down on the ground, motionless. Roaring in triumph, Jonquil joined Daran in cheer. "Nice shot," she cried, as he darted over to pick up the trophy. A trophy that would become a rather lucky rabbit's paw, and a memory of a good hunt with perhaps a soon-to-be friend. Yet all was not good in Wendbridge. While crossing a river, some of the band's supplies came loose and fell into it. They watched helplessly as the water swept those supplies away. While a lot of supplies are still with them, thankfully, they still lost quite a bit. Daran's companions had a number of different suggestions on what to do, some saying they should go downstream to see if they can recover some of those supplies, especially if they've washed ashore. Others say that they should just cut their losses and purchase replacement supplies at the next town, while others yet say they should just bear with their own misfortune and carry along. As difficult of a choice as it was, the choice was clear to Daran. They would purchase what they could in the next town, further setting them back. While purchasing those very supplies in Sheafbrook, Daran started to take closer note of Clement's practices. He often helped with small wounds, scratches, putting together poultices like it was nothing. Daran witnessed him suddenly run to a small peasant kid, struggling to breathe and turning an unnatural color in a back alley. And before he knew it, the kid's face returned back to normal. How exactly did he do it? Seeking to question the supposed maester, Daran sought to learn what he could, and in turn did learn a thing or two, becoming a novice physician in the process. A day later, Daran encountered an imposing man standing on the road ahead of them. "I am Roderick of Durin's Town. I have bested dozens of men in combat, and honestly all of those fights were a little dull. So here I am, on the road, looking for someone better than me, someone that I can learn from. If you can best me in combat, I will become a valuable and loyal servant. And so on this day I demand to meet one of you in a fair fight." Eyeing the warrior, it was clear that he was no knight. Daran would best him easily, and who was he to turn away yet another sword? They would fight, and Daran would win, unsurprisingly, with Ronald joining them as they neared their destination in Crow's Nest. They were close now, yet before they arrived, they came across ancient ruins in Gyril, which weren't the most spectacular, and they weren't that large, so they couldn't camp there. Yet even so, they were quite something to see. Daran and his entourage had been rather bored from the day's travel on the dreary road, so the ruins gave them something to talk about. Among other topics, they eagerly speculated on why the ruins were built in the first place, of which ancients inhabited it, and what it may have looked like in its heyday. And now finally, before Lady Rosamond herself. "Oh, you have come at my acquaintance's behest, no? On what business?" Thorin stepped forwards. "Worthy Lady Rosamond, I speak for Lady Morlora, but the message I bear is fit for your ears alone." "Come," answered the lady darkly. "We shall speak in my chambers. Captain Daran, your service is noted. You may remain as a guest in my castle." And they would, but not for long. Collecting their coin, they would return to the gauntlet, yet not before a number of other opportunities. As the band continued through Keithong Pass, Darian's eyes caught an elaborately decorated tomb amidst a network of common graves. The tomb appears to be cracked open, and just within the mouth, he caught sight of the glimmer of treasures unknown. None but the band appeared to be around, and surely whomever once owned the contents of this tomb would not cast judgment on Daran for taking what would otherwise go unused. Surely no one would notice. And with that, Daran was one step closer to clearing his own and the band's debts. On the 12th of 6th moon, the band found themselves in Storm's End. Brewis, the local captain, and a few of his officers greeted Daran and his entourage as they entered the military camps of the castle. He quickly dismounted, eager to inspect the local barracks, positively brimming with activity. Daran nodded, appreciating the organized chaos that he was observing.
Now, what would my lord want to do next?
Bruce looked at Daran expectantly. The answer was simple, of course. Some sparring, hoping to improve his own prowess, and in so doing, Daran increased his renown further. With the gauntlet near in sight, the band was nearly back at their proper camp. Yet before they arrived, a grotto emerged from the vegetation like a stone arch in a cathedral. On its entry, there was a small wooden table and a stall. Someone had left a lantern burning on it.
Careful, my liege.
Alderio held up his arm in front of Daran's chest.
There are bandits in these lands. You're quick to make accusations.
A dimly illuminated figure stood in the entrance to the cave.
I'm merely a hermit, and you, well, you carry the title of captain.
There was an opportunity here. A chance to gain a glimpse into his future. Daran would seize it. The hermit took a second before replying. He got up and waited until Daran followed. There were herbs scattered around and what seemed to be a rudimentary bed. He turned to Daran once they were away from the others, and with an oddly deeper voice replied,
The fire shall talk, and silver shall flow from the hoof of lowing cattle.
An omen? A prophecy? Daran would carry the words with him either way. As of returning, there was little work to be found, save for yet another escort contract. Sir Lorman was seeking an envoy and was offering enough coin to pay off the remainder of Daran's debts. Though it would pain him to be further from King's Landing, the band needed the coin. Sir Lorman's representative, Myrina, had words to carry to Lord Warwick of Hayford, words that Daran would ensure reached their target. It was a journey that would not take them long, but 2 weeks on the road, and allowing him for a brief moment to be closer to Sarah, high in that tower. After passing through the walls, the band sought to camp. Long after the night had settled, Daran, for the first time in a long time, found himself laughing, telling stories and drinking with Cyrene, Reynard, and Jonquil. He didn't know it that she had it in her, but Cyrene ended up telling a particularly ribald story about 4 peasants she had seen in the gauntlet. After drying his eyes from the laughter and drinking a bit, Daran cleared his throat, telling a story of his own, of his days back in the south, on the sandy shores of Dawn. And just like that, they had arrived. Far faster than Myrina had anticipated, paying the band extra for their service. For the first time since his journey had started, Daran and the band were no longer in the negative, and word of Daran's exploits spread further still. He was distinguished among the knights of the realm. The band had sat for too long in the gauntlet. He needed to be closer to Sarah, and so they packed up their tents and their supplies, finding somewhere in the lower city to settle. Here he would seek to find them more work, whilst also attempting to learn the language of Sarah and her family. High Valyrian was far from simple, and Daran was not the most learned of knights, yet he would try all the same, so that one day he may write to his love in her own tongue. 2 more contracts had presented themselves in the taverns of King's Landing. Sir Seth had a criminal's head he'd very much liked to see on his desk. Bradwell was the name of the brigand in question, and so from King's Landing they set out, travelling to seek the fiend. And it would not take long. They found him in the rolling plains of Whiteplate, a large man who gripped his sword well.
Would that we hadn't met under such inauspicious circumstances, Daran, for I have no quarrel with you,
opined Bradwell.
Alas, I fear you intend to follow your duty to its bitter end.
Bradwell could not win here, yet he could flee. Daran knew that he could bait the man, though, into a duel to the death. Donning his armor, Bradwell clutched a spear, not unlike that of Daran's. They circled each other, waiting for the right moment to strike. Daran did his best to recall the legends in the spur of the moment, to try and couch his spear as did the heroes of old. It's enough for a solid blow against his surprised foe. Bradwell cracked his neck and then started to rain his own blows against Daran's guard, a marathon of piercing thrusts that almost break him with their relentless ferocity. Daran's stance is good with only small errors, while Bradwell's is failing. Daran's spear was a better protector than any shield, parrying, countering, and guarding against Bradwell's every move. Wherever his spear moved, Daran's is there waiting. Bradwell is famed for his ability with a spear, and he reminds Daran of that. With a perfect flowing chain of thrusting jabs, punctuated by the occasional terrifying, piercing thrust, Daran's spear flows around Bradwell like water, each strike chaining fluidly into the next, a series of perfectly timed attacks. Bradwell surges forwards, forcing Daran back with a thrusting jab before bringing up a high kick to his chest, almost toppling him. Daran's spare arm moved as fast as lightning, striking as hard as sundered stone. It was admirable that Bradwell was able to withstand as many spear blows as he did. Yet as Daran rained down upon him with the fury of a thunderous storm, it took but a minute or 2 before the man was beaten into a bloody, twisted, screaming heap. Only once Daran was satisfied that there would be no last-second chance for revenge did he administer the killing blow. With head delivered and coin purse in hand, to King's Landing. Upon returning, the other contract remained. A fair subject needed to be rescued. One of Lord Reynard's fairest courtiers had not returned from an incursion into the woods of Proudwell. The Lord's court was eager to offer a reward. Yet it was not coin, prestige and piety, with provisions supplied for the trouble of travel. What else was a good knight to do but answer the call? Whilst close to their destination, and as the band sat beside the campfire after a long day, a group of travelers approached them in the dark. They looked like a gaggle of lost pilgrims, led by a haggard-looking man. Despite Daran's first impressions, he noticed that they were carrying valuables of some kind or another.
Please, my lord, may we be allowed to rest by your campfire? We have been through a long journey.
Daran signaled the band to be at ease. There was more than enough room around the campfire this night. Arriving in Proudwell, a tired Lord Renard approached the camp with his men, the horses stopping right before the tent of Daran.
"A damned woman,"
the Lord mumbled.
"I bid you good morning, Daran,"
he said, wiping the sweat off his forehead.
"It seems that a most beautiful woman has been lost in the woods. My courtiers will not stop lamenting until I bring her back."
The search would begin at dawn. It was clear that the task could take months. The forest was wide and their numbers small, yet Daran was determined to answer the call. They were close now to finding that fair subject. Yet as they searched, they found someone else. Passing through the province of Coinbridge, a jubilant local approached, his smile stretching from ear to ear. Daran could discern that he was offering a warm welcome, but the finer aspects of his speech were sadly lost on him. Be that as it may, Daran waved away his attentive companions and returned his joyful greeting. It was the perfect opportunity to practice his Valerian. Daran sought to try his very best and succeeded at an engaging debate, learning more about the language than he might have imagined. Yet that was not all. Back! A high-pitched scream made its way through the thicket of trees. Daran followed. Standing in the middle of the clearing was one of the most beautiful men he had ever laid his eyes on. He was wielding a stick like a spear, trying to keep his distance from a ferocious lynx. With a quick slash of his blade, Daran cleaved into the beast, and the animal let out a spurt of blood, staining the grass as it falled. "My lord," the man cried, falling to his knees. It would seem that the lady that Lord Reynard sought was quite different than previously described. Yet all the same, he would be returned to Reynard's court. Daran returned to King's Landing, full of hope. Perhaps he could seek an audience with the princess. His Valerian far better now than before. Yet as he arrived at the walls of the Red Keep, his world was shattered. Princess Sarah was unavailable for an audience of any kind, as she was no longer in the Red Keep. In the time that Daran was searching those woods, Sarah and her entourage had traveled far to the north, sailing from King's Landing, past the Vale, to White Harbour, and then further north still, past Winterfell, to Last Hearth, and further yet, further than Daran could ever dream. What might she have thought, approaching the Great Wall and Castle Black? The Thens, no doubt, would have been waiting for the young dragon to escort her to the edge of the world, to that valley amongst snow and stone. It was here that young Daran Dryland would have to travel if he hoped to ever see his love again. It would be an odyssey like none other. Already, young Daran had come so far from dawn, risen to the heights of knighthood from nothing. His designs, his desire for power, led him to Sarah, and it was under her gaze that very plan fell apart. Falling in love with the dragon, that was never in the plan. They did not know it yet, but dangerous days were ahead for the Drywell band. They had seen success and prosperity under the leadership of the young knight, yet love would now take them to the far north, into the ice, into the white. Winter is coming.